It's a pleasure to be here, guys. I appreciate it. As the intro suggested, my name is Nick Lavery. I'm an active duty member of the United States Army Special Forces, which means that day to day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, I'm in a uniform working for you. Quick walk through time. In 2012, on my third trip into Afghanistan, I was wounded in combat on 3 separate occasions. The first was when I took some grenade shrapnel to the back of my shoulder. Blew about a lemon-sized hole in me. Bit of a shock. Pain really was not much at all. Wasn't anything me and my teammates couldn't manage. Plug it up, pressure dressing, continue with work. Eventually, hours later, I did get put in front of a doctor, took a look at it. He taught me and my teammates how to treat it, and then just right back to business. Took me out of the fight maybe 5-6 days. About 6 weeks after that was when I was wounded for the second time. And it was here that I took an AK-47 round to the face. Now, I realize that that's not something you hear often. Usually someone takes a rifle round to the face, they are not alive to tell you that. So obviously I got very, very lucky, grazed my cheek. It looked ugly, looked like a zombie had kind of taken a bite out of the side of my face. It bled a lot, clipped an artery, but in the context of what was happening around me at that time, literally a scratch. I had 6 of my friends who were severely wounded in a roadside bomb were literally right around me, all fighting for their lives. Similar to the first incident, this took me out of the game about a week. Kept an eye on it for infection. There was some talk about having me medevaced out of country, into Germany, and then back into the States. I had been wounded twice, and our leadership had some concerns about me staying in that environment, staying in that game. Well, leaving my teammates was simply not an option. So I was allowed to stay. On the back end of this same deployment, it's now March 11th of 2013. We have about 2, maybe 3 weeks left before we're supposed to head home. This is where I was wounded for the 3rd time. And this was the result of what we refer to as a green on blue scenario, which is a fancy way of saying an insider attack, meaning that a guy that we had been training and going out on operations with for months turned on us. And immediately prior to relatively large joint operations, something which we had done many, many, many times, an individual with the Afghan National Police Force climbed up on the back of a Ford Ranger pickup truck that had a mounted PKM belt-fed machine gun and opened fire into me and my teammates from about 30 feet away. Now, that weapon system can cause significant damage all the way at ranges of 500 to 600 meters. At 30 feet, it's catastrophic. As the shooter initiated his attack on us, I was actually walking away from him, heading towards my vehicle, getting ready to load up so we can move out. And I hear the rounds crack off from behind me. I snap my head around and I see what's happening in front of me. Teammates are dropping, some are starting to scramble. I know what my job is at that point in time. And really, we train with 2 responses in that scenario. The first is move to cover and eliminate the threat. The word cover just means something that can stop bullets. Move behind something that can protect you and eliminate that problem. That's option 1. Option 2 is what we call assault through, which means you're just going gun on gun straight towards the threat. These are practices that I had trained on hundreds of times, and these are practices that I had done in real life dozens and dozens of times. But something prevented me from doing my job. And that is one of our infantry soldiers that was assigned to us who was set to go out on this mission this day as a driver, was frozen with deer in headlights, 25 feet in front of a guy who was unloading a machine gun directly towards him. Deer in headlights, pale. 18-year-old kid, first deployment ever, fresh out of basic training. And seeing this is really what superseded me doing what I'm expected to do. So rather than doing my job, I decided to move towards this soldier. He's not more than 8 feet in front of me. I take a few aggressive steps. I get to him. He and I go chest to chest. I turn my back towards the gunman, and that was when I was hit for the first time in the top of my right leg. Boom. And that weapon system from that range, it's not a piercing sensation. It's like you're getting hit by a train. So it knocks me and this soldier down to the ground. Boom. I'm laying on top of him. We're face to face, and I feel several more impacts to my lower body. Okay, roger that. I know I've been hit now again for the third time. No idea how bad it is, but we'll get to that here in a minute. Drag myself and this soldier about 6 feet, get behind a piece of cover, a corner of one of our trucks. One of my teammates comes in, smokes this guy. Boom. That entire incident that I just described might have lasted 9 seconds. In 9 seconds, a lot of damage can happen because myself and 12 other Americans were down, 3 of which were either dead instantly or would eventually die, and myself and another 8 with different variations of wounds. There's also around another 12 Afghan casualties that were down. This is considered the most catastrophic insider attack that we actually have on record. A true mass cal scenario. Well, initially, I thought that this threat had been neutralized, that, okay, problem solved, let's deal with what we got. Then I realized that we were taking rockets and machine gun fire from outside of our compound. About 25 enemy fighters that had us almost entirely surrounded. So this was a coordinated attack. This was their Super Bowl Hail Mary moment. Now, we've been kicking these guys' asses for 5.5 months, and this was their chance to push us out. I'm in no position to deal with any of those threats, so I moved to my next course of action, was to check on the status of this soldier that I'm still laying on top of. Head-to-toe sweep, check his airway. He can breathe, he can talk, he has no holes in him. He's relatively fine. He's in shock, but he's good. Check myself. Rip my pant leg open to expose my right leg, which really didn't look much like a leg at this point. It looked like something that had just gone through a meat grinder, or like a great white shark had gotten a hold of it. Estimated 5 rounds is what penetrated my right leg and just decimated it. Exposed bone, exposed tissue, and a river of blood flowing from me to where I'd initially been hit. So right now I know a couple things. 1, my femur is definitely broken. And 2, my femoral artery has been cut, which training tells us you might have 8 minutes to live unless you can get that thing completely closed off. So the clock is ticking. Take a tourniquet off my kit, strap that down, lock it in. Bleeding doesn't move at all. It's here that I know with certainty that this is where I die. This is where it ends. But there's still work to be done. Second tourniquet comes off, put that down, wrench it in, lock in the windlass. Bleeding looks like it may have pinched off a little bit, but not nearly enough. Teammate gets to me. Look on his face says everything that needs to be said. I'm trying to fight him off of me. I'm trying to tell him to go work on others that can be saved, because I had already put myself into what we refer to as the expectant category of triage, the process of organizing patients based on the severity of their injury, the likelihood of the survivability, and the resources you have to use. I've been on both sides of that decision-making process, and it is really difficult to decide that one of your friends, one of your brothers, is going into this expectant category, and you do not treat those individuals until the others have been treated first. You save those that you can. So I thought I was helping my teammate. I thought I was helping my buddy, saying, hey, man, go work on someone you can save. It's not me. He ignored me, put on a third tourniquet. He got IV access for follow-on blood or meds, and then at that point, his work really was done. I'm laying there, and I'm thinking, have I done everything I can do? And the answer was no, you hadn't, not yet. I had one last trick up my sleeve. I loosen up my tourniquet, one of them. I grab some gauze. I ball it up into what we call a power ball, which really just gives gauze a little bit of density to work with. And I ram this up into my thigh, reaching upwards towards my pelvis, trying to feel for the pulse of the femoral artery. Now, this is something that we do in training. I can assure you, when you're doing something like this on yourself, it is wildly different. From a physiological perspective, when you're losing that much blood, your blood will shunt inwards to protect your organs as long as possible. So you have zero dexterity. So there's that. And then there's just this sheer shock that my fist is in my leg. It's a weird place to be. I happen to get incredibly lucky because I press down, I feed the gauze, I lock in the tourniquet on top of that, and then I go unconscious. Turns out that I absolutely nailed my femoral artery, which we can say with 100% certainty because it took over an hour and a half before a first medevac bird could land to pick us up. And this is because of the ongoing firefight that was going on around us. All right, birds were on station within minutes, but you simply can't risk the helicopter in that kind of an environment on the ground. Hour and a half goes by. Eventually, I'm getting loaded onto the bird. My teammate grabs me by the ears. We're nose to nose, and he's telling me he loves me. And he's saying his last goodbyes to me. He's never going to see me again. And I know what he's doing, and I want to be in this moment with him. But something prevented that from happening, and that was me noticing the position of the sun. I had no idea how much time had gone by, but I knew it had been a decent amount of time. And a while back, I said, this is where it ends. And it was in that moment provided to me by a teammate where I said, you know what? Maybe this isn't it. Maybe you can battle through this. And it was in that moment that I deliberately went into combat mode, a place in which I'm incredibly comfortable and familiar. And although I wasn't shooting a rifle, and although I couldn't see my enemy, I was in a street fight. And now it was time to stop throwing some punches. Me against you. Who wants it more? I get medevaced out eventually. I get to in front of a doctor. I am out of blood. When I say out of blood, guys, I mean I was literally out of blood. Transfusion goes on board. They pull me into surgery. They're putting my femoral artery back together. As soon as the procedure's done, everything begins to crash. Liver, kidneys, lungs dying. Vitals plummeting. At this point, there are 6 of us at an outstation that have what we call a forward surgical team, and we had overwhelmed their capacity. They said, we don't know what's wrong with Nick right now, but we cannot deal with this. We have to get him to Bagram, where we had a full-blown hospital. Pull me on a bird, send me to Bagram. It's an 11-minute flight. I'm about halfway there when they realize that they had administered 6 units of an incompatible blood type. Yeah. The medics on that bird, they catch wind of what's going on. They say there is no way Nick survives this flight to Bagram. It's impossible. 2 medics are on this flight. One, a private first class. This kid had been in the Army for about 15 minutes. The second, an E5 buck sergeant. Motivated kid. Well, what do you think these 2 guys decide to do? Rather than listening to what's coming over the radio to them about me, and how I am a lost cause and I will die, I've coded right in front of them. No pulse, nothing. What do these 2 savages do? They decide to just dump out their med bag on top of me. And when I say that, guys, I mean literally. They empty out their kit bag and they say, let's just start trying stuff and just see what happens. They turned me into a living science experiment, flying over Afghanistan in a Black Hawk helicopter. Let's just see what happens. I've had a chance to connect with some of these guys years later, thanks to the power of social media and the internet. It's been a wild conversation. These guys pumped me full of 6 times the allotted amount of adrenaline that a human body is able to consume. Panels are out. So you can just imagine this. These 2 young soldiers, one of them is about 12 years old, and they've got the panels going, clear, boof, more adrenaline, more adrenaline. It's just they're turning me into this Frankenstein experiment. Needless to say, I'm incredibly grateful for their wild insubordination and breaking of Army protocol. The story goes on much farther, guys. This is designed to be quick and to the point. I realize I am the last thing in between you and all of us and the rest of this event and this evening. I will just say this. My book, Objective Secure, as was mentioned, is available here for you guys if you want to check it out. It really answers the how question. All right, how did you do what you did? How did you go through all of that and earn your way back onto a detachment with full operational status? How did you continue to deploy back to combat over and over and over and over again as a Green Beret with one leg? How did you do that? No one else in history has done that. I've got plenty of other milestones that I'm certainly proud of my list of firsts. The how is there. Love to talk to you more about it. What I want to just take the last minute of your time and discuss is the why, because it is deeply rooted in the how. And here's really my challenge for all of you. When your why becomes part of your how, or when your why becomes at the center of that how, literally the only limitations are the ones that we exist on purpose in our own minds. That's it. 3 answers to the why. On the periphery level, I'm incredibly stubborn and I'm incredibly competitive. Everyone in this room knows exactly what that's like. The idea of someone other than me determining my fate and my future was unacceptable. Go a layer deeper than that and you've got passion. I love what I do. In fact, I consider it to be the greatest honor and privilege a human being can take on to pledge themselves to a society in which we will defend at all costs, no matter what. It's a privilege and it's an honor. And it's a lifestyle in which I love. And I loved it that much. I love it that much that I had to get back to doing it. And then lastly, at the core, is the sense of purpose I have with what I do. Purpose meaning doing something that creates an impact on others. Passion is for me. Purpose is for you. I am amongst a very small demographic of people who've had a chance to live their purpose daily now for over 16 years. So I leave you with, if you're finding yourself floating through life, day to day, week to week, living 5 days of misery for a 36-hour distraction, that is no way to live. That is not living at all, as far as I'm concerned. You're just prolonging the inevitable. If you have yet to determine what that purpose is, what kind of impact you can create on others, I challenge you to invest considerable bandwidth, time, energy, and even money in figuring out what that is, and then cultivating a lifestyle around that. When you do that, not only will it increase your happiness and fulfillment, but it's going to wildly increase what you do for your friends, your family, your colleagues, your legacy. Success is nothing more than the sum of small efforts performed daily. Determine that purpose, rooted in passion, and nothing is impossible. Guys, I'm going to be here out at this booth. We got books. I'm looking forward to hanging out. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, guys, and thank you for your time.